There we go. Live. You are now live on Talk Heathen. What's going on, Universal?
Yes, sir. This is such an interesting topic. And my theory is this, is that just like the human body, it has deeper dimensions from the skin level to the cellular level. See, the Bible in that same aspect has those same qualities from the surface to the deeper of the dimensions of the Bible. See? So when we talk about the surface, we're talking about the stories. And these stories are interesting because they show the animal in us. See? Because we have an animal, but we also have another side. Like I say, just like the skin is the surface, we have a cellular side too.
So what's
and
the
that cellular side in the spirit? Excuse me?
Oh, it sounds like you might be getting there. What's the cellular side of the Bible in this analogy?
That would be your higher self. See, because we have an animal, so just like we have an animal, we have a conscious, and this conscious is your higher self. So when you understand your higher self now guides your animal. Because if you don't have a guide towards that animal, then he remains wild and domesticated.
Yeah. I think
so your higher self is supposed to be driving.
Universal, I think if you take this sort of Carl Jungian approach to the Bible and like to other forms of literature, I think you can maybe even get I would even posit and say great forms of spiritual development for yourself. You may learn something about yourself that you didn't realize before, or something about humanity, and maybe there's a truth there that is meaningful to you. And if that is the case, that is great. For the rest of us, it's really hard for us to look at the Bible that way for a couple of reasons. And the biggest one, at least for me, is the way that it's being interpreted by everybody else. Because just because you have this great and wonderful and fantastic and detailed theory of how the Bible just makes sense and it explains everything, the guy down the street that's advocating for Christian nationalism is well, real quick, Universal. The guy down the street doesn't have that same interpretation, right? And so the problem I have with this is, look, there's 7 billion people on Earth. There's going to be 8 billion different versions of the Bible, depending on how you look at it. I just don't think it's a reliable way to communicate human truths, right? I don't think it's a reliable way to come to spiritual development. It may work for you, and that's great, but for the rest of us, it can be a tool for oppression as much as it can be a tool for salvation. So I'd rather not use it if I can. Does that make sense?
See, when you say an interpretation is the focal point. It's about what you interpret. Now, if you relying on other people to interpret it for you, see, that's what your animal do. It says, lead me, because it needs to be led.
I mean, doesn't the Bible advocate for that?
There's universal truths in the Bible that if you do and follow these universal truths take you into victoriousness in your genius, because you're created to be genius.
I mean, this is kind of sounding like
genius,
mysticism. Like a lot of what you're saying, I mean, if that's what you think, cool, but there's not even evidence for it in the Bible. The Bible doesn't talk in this way about an animal self and about a sort of spiritual magic self and how your spirit is driving you, like a bit of like a car analogy, like we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
It doesn't talk about you needing to be a genius. None of this is coming from the Bible. It kind of just sounds like it's what you feel, which is fine, but I don't really understand advocating for looking at the Bible for guidance and then saying a bunch of stuff that doesn't appear anywhere in it.
Yeah, I'm going to say this, Universal.
This is what I mean by this is what I mean by skin focus. The skin don't know what's going on in the outside. That's why you have to know thyself, to know you more than just your animal. Now, the animal is not aware. It's not conscious. It just reacts.
I mean, you're quoting Shakespeare to make your argument about the Bible.
And conscious responds.
I don't know if we're on the same page here. I think we need to take a step back. But listen, as far as interpretations go, right? I'm assuming you don't speak New Testament Greek Koine, right? I'm assuming you don't speak ancient Hebrew,
no, sir.
right? I don't either. I'm relying on translators who translate the Bible, who give their interpretation to the particular words that are used. I'm also relying on biblical commentaries to understand the time and place in which these books were written, and the origin points of these books, right? The truth is, at every layer when we talk about, if you let me finish, for every layer when we talk about the Bible, right? Like, I do have to rely on other people because I wasn't there when the book was written. We're so out of time and place.
So lay on that point right there. When you say that, then you're primitive in your position.
I don't think that makes me primitive. I think that makes me a responsible researcher in the text that I'm looking at. I really want to finish my point before I let you finish. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you and let me finish my point. Thank you. We have to rely on other people to make interpretations. There is no such thing as a completely independent interpretation of events when it comes to reading ancient texts. That is a fantasy. I'm sorry. You have to rely on other people's ideas when it comes to the literal words being taught, the context and understanding of the stories that are being presented, and also your own life experiences and spiritual interpretations. Like there's a combination that happens there. This idea that, oh, there's this animal side of us and there's this other side of us. I think that's too binary. I don't subscribe to this idea. I think it's a limited worldview by which to interpret ancient texts like the Bible. I am unmuting you now, so go ahead.
Okay, so now, I mean, you have a great point, but now this is what I'm saying. Anytime you depend on man to define your position, when you done gathered the information yourself, then now you're relying on man.
Universal, are you not a man?
You're relying on divine.
Are you not a man, Universal?
Yes, sir.
Why should I listen to you?
Sir.
You are but a man, right? And I should not rely on man, and now I don't have to listen to you, right? You see how we can kind of these
observation.
I know, but these principles, right? Like it sounds like these deep spiritual truths that somehow get us to this higher, interpretation and understanding. But we can just just defeat them using simple reason, right? I mean, look, if the Bible gets you somewhere and lets you get something out of it, that's great. I'm not here to take that away from you. What I am here to say is, look, your interpretation is just that. It's an interpretation, just like my interpretation is interpretation. I don't see why you have, or your understanding gives you this idea that you now have this hierarchy, because you are putting other people's beliefs down, essentially. You're saying, look, other people, they don't understand the Bible right, and I do, because I have this magic truth,
I think it might throw in there, too, that anything we say, you're just saying, oh, well, that's animal, and I guess if we agree with you, then maybe that's spiritual. So it's very easy to always be right if you just say everybody else is, they're relying on the wrong things. I am relying on the right things, which functionally, when you say spiritual, it's your feelings.
Yeah.
So I don't know really where we can go with this conversation, unfortunately, because I feel like we're going around in circles, because it doesn't matter what we say, because we also believe we're animals, just without the spiritual side. So